Nicholas Thompson, senior editor at Wired Magazine, believes Verizon is positioned well in the battle of the smartphones. Nick, welcome to the show. In fact, in the most recent Verizon commercial, speaking of Guitar Hero, you see the guy walking along his college campus or whatever, playing Guitar Hero on his phone. They're releasing 2 versions of the Droid phone. Should we be very excited about this?
We should be pretty excited about it. Android software works, so phones that run Android is the operating system that runs inside the hardware. It actually works very well. It's coming out on a whole bunch of phones, and the Verizon phones are set up to make probably the biggest splash of the Android phones this winter.
Nick, well enough to give Apple and the iPhone a run for its money?
Well, it depends. I don't think they're going to supplant the iPhone as America's most popular phone, but they could gain on it. I mean, what's very important to Verizon, as we saw in its earnings report that just came out, is they're in 2 bad businesses. DSL is a bad business because it's getting crushed by cable. Landline is a bad business because everybody's getting rid of it. And then they're in 2 good businesses. Fios, which is high-speed internet access through which you can get your TV, and then cell phones. And they haven't been doing well enough in the good businesses to make up for the fall-offs in the bad businesses. That's what we saw in the earnings report. So they need to do really well in cell phones, so they're coming out with these Android phones. The other thing that's important about them is that Verizon does well with corporate customers. These Android phones should do well with regular consumers.
So as far as the connectivity is concerned, I mean, that's really the bonus that the iPhone has over the BlackBerry, right? You can easily access the internet. It feels almost like you're on your laptop. Is Android going to be able to deliver that same kind of experience?
Yeah, absolutely. What the iPhone has that the BlackBerry doesn't is an app store where you can download stuff that everybody in the world creates. Traditionally, the Verizon phones haven't had that. The Android phones will. So it will allow them to compete with Apple where Apple is strongest.
Will they have the same kind of content? I mean, will there be as much stuff on Verizon's app store as there is at Apple's?
Not at the beginning, but what's so interesting is that there's so many Android phones coming out, there's going to be more incentive for coders to create apps for Android phones. Because it's not just Verizon that's building Android phones.
There's going to be a lot of competition here.
Well, but the competition is good because competition gives coders more reason to write apps that can be downloaded into all this bevy of Android phones. So Apple has 1 iPhone. People write apps for that 1 iPhone. There are 25 Android phones, so lots of people are going to have reason to write apps for them.
So it's going to feel, what I'm saying is there's going to be several folks coming out with Android phones.
Right.
I mean, so there's going to be a lot of competition among those guys.
Right. So
what's going to set them apart, and Verizon for that matter?
Well, so Verizon will try to argue that you can get Android phones from all of these people, but you get Verizon coverage from Verizon, and Verizon says it has its best network. So that's the competitive advantage for Verizon.
Is that enough of a competitive advantage?
We'll see. It's worked fairly well in the past, but not enough to keep up with the iPhone so far.
What's the deal with the Android system? I mean, I hear that programmers may be even happier to deal with that platform because they can continually build on it, whereas Apple is a bit of a closed system.
Right, so Android is what's called open source, which means everything is open. You can see all the code that makes it up, so it's a little bit easier to manipulate and work with, and you also don't have to deal with Apple, which is a very closed company, and you have to get approval sometimes, and there are sorts of hurdles you have to clear. Google is extremely open. They've tried to make it as easy as possible for people to write apps for it.
So what do you expect when it launches in November? I mean, do you expect there to be a quick ramp up, or what?
I think there's going to be a slow build, but I think people are going to be very excited, and there are going to be lots and lots of Android phones. But the tough question is the one you ask. Verizon has Android phones. Will it be able to distinguish itself from the other Android suppliers?
We'll see, right?
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. Nick, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, Nicholas Thompson of Wired Magazine.